The crowd roared as the executioner tightened the noose around Ilara's neck. Thousands of Zyrrakians cheered, their reptilian faces twisted in amusement. The great Zyrrak Dominion had captured a human, one they deemed dangerous enough to make an example of. They believed this would break humanity's spirit. They were wrong. Ilara stood tall, defiant, her face showing no fear. Even as the executioner pulled the lever, even as the platform beneath her feet vanished, her final expression was one of quiet victory. The Zyrrakians didn't understand the words she whispered before the rope snapped her neck. But one man would. The broadcast spread across Dominion space like wildfire, a symbol of the Empire's dominance. They expected submission. What they received instead was the quiet rage of a man who had spent his life waging wars. Deep within a warship, far from Zyrrak-controlled territory, General Adrian Voss watched the footage in silence. His officers hesitated, waiting for his command. No one spoke. The room felt like a vacuum, the air thick with the weight of what had just been taken from him. He reached for the screen, pausing on her image, the love of his life, gone. The woman who had once brought warmth to his war-hardened soul, now reduced to a trophy for alien tyrants. His fingers clenched into a fist. Blood dripped from his palm where his nails dug into flesh, but he didn't seem to notice. Finally, he turned to his second-in-command. His voice was calm, steady. "Prepare the fleet." The officer nodded, stepping away quickly. The silence stretched as Adrian stood motionless, staring at the screen, as if committing the moment to memory. When he finally moved, it was with cold precision. The War Council gathered, their faces tense. They had seen Adrian in battle before, had followed him through countless wars. But never had they seen this version of him, this quiet, controlled storm. Maps of the Zyrrak Dominion appeared before them, their military installations marked. Adrian studied them, his expression unreadable. His voice, when he spoke, was devoid of emotion. "We take everything. No survivors. No warnings. No mercy." The officers exchanged glances. This wasn't just war. This was annihilation. And none of them would dare stand in his way. Within hours, the fleet was mobilized. Warships, carriers, and bombers, an armada unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Engines roared to life, weapons were primed. As the ships jumped into hyperspace, an unspoken understanding settled over the crew. This wasn't just retaliation. This was vengeance. The Zyrrak Dominion never saw it coming. Their arrogance had blinded them. They had executed a single human, believing it would send a message. Instead, it had signed their death warrant. The first attack came without warning. A Zyrrak fleet stationed near the outer colonies detected an anomaly, a brief flicker in space. Before they could react, human warships dropped out of hyperspace. Missile barrages struck their hulls before their shields even activated. Explosions consumed the Zyrrak vessels in seconds. Not a single distress call made it out. The system went silent. Across the Dominion, alarms blared. Reports of missing fleets, blacked-out colonies, and communications failing one by one. Zyrrak officials dismissed it as technical issues. A mistake they wouldn't live long enough to regret. Then, the real war began. Human warships appeared over Zyrrak Prime, the Dominion's homeworld. The planetary defense grid scrambled to respond, but they were too slow. Orbital bombardments rained down on military installations, reducing them to molten craters. The once proud Zyrrak fleet stationed above their capital was reduced to burning debris within minutes. On the ground, the city burned. Zyrrak soldiers, unprepared for such swift devastation, ran in chaos. Their rulers, safe within their heavily fortified palace, demanded to know who was responsible. The answer came in the form of a single transmission. A human stood before them, clad in dark battle-worn armor, his eyes devoid of warmth. "You took my wife," Adrian Voss said. "Now, I take everything." The transmission cut out. The assault resumed. Human dropships descended from the skies, unleashing legions of soldiers who moved with lethal precision. Zyrrak resistance was crushed in hours. Their weapons were outdated, their tactics obsolete. Against Adrian's forces, they never stood a chance. In the streets, Zyrrak civilians cowered, watching as their once great empire crumbled around them. Some tried to surrender. Adrian did not care. He had not come for negotiations. The Zyrrak royal guards made their last stand at the palace gates. They fought bravely. It didn't matter. Adrian himself led the charge, cutting through them with the same cold efficiency he had honed over years of war. Blood stained the palace floors as his soldiers marched forward without pause. The palace doors were torn open. The Zyrrak Emperor, once a symbol of absolute power, stood frozen in fear as Adrian stepped toward him. The human general said nothing. The Emperor tried to speak, to bargain, to plead. Adrian raised his weapon. One shot. The Dominion's leader crumpled to the ground. The Zyrrak people, watching from the ruins of their city, understood at last. They had made a mistake, and there would be no forgiveness. The fall of Zyrrak Prime was only the beginning. Adrian did not stop. He did not slow. His forces spread like wildfire, tearing through Dominion space with brutal efficiency. One by one, Zyrrak-controlled worlds fell. Some tried to fight. They were the first to burn. Others surrendered without resistance. Their fate was no different. Entire cities were reduced to ash. Space stations once teeming with life were left as drifting husks. Zyrrak generals sent desperate transmissions, pleading for reinforcements that would never come. Their fleets had been wiped out before they even understood the scale of what was happening. Adrian made sure his message was clear. On every conquered planet, a single city was left standing. No soldiers, no resistance, only terrified survivors left to spread the warning. Their people had once cheered for the execution of a human woman. Now, they whispered the name of the man who had come for retribution. The Zyrrak ruling council attempted to flee, seeking refuge in the most fortified systems of their empire. It didn't matter. Adrian was always one step ahead. His fleet cut off escape routes, his ground forces stormed their strongholds. One by one, the rulers were dragged from their hiding places. There were no trials. No speeches. No mercy. The Zyrrak military, once considered unstoppable, fractured under the relentless assault. Commanders turned on each other, desperate to save themselves. Some abandoned their posts, vanishing into uncharted space, hoping to escape Adrian's wrath. Others made the mistake of surrendering. They soon learned that Adrian did not accept surrender. In less than a month, the Zyrrak Dominion ceased to exist. Its banners were torn down, its history erased. The species that had ruled over countless worlds now had no home, no leadership, no future. Those who survived became nomads, scattered remnants of a civilization that had thought itself invincible. Adrian stood amidst the ruins of their once mighty empire, his mission complete. His officers awaited his next command. Would they expand? Conquer? Take the Dominion's former territory for humanity? Instead, Adrian gave only one order. Leave them. His soldiers exchanged confused glances but obeyed. The human fleet withdrew, leaving behind nothing but silence. The Zyrrakians had not just been defeated. They had been broken. Their empire was gone, their people left to wander the stars as exiles. No enemy had ever been given such a fate. No species had ever been so thoroughly erased. Word spread quickly. Other alien civilizations, once dismissive of humanity, now watched with quiet terror. The lesson was clear. Humanity had no interest in conquest. They did not seek war. But if provoked, if something they loved was taken from them, there would be no warnings. Only the end. The galaxy fell silent. The Zyrrak Dominion, once a superpower, was gone. Its worlds lay in ruins, its people scattered. No treaties had been signed, no negotiations had taken place. Humanity had come, delivered judgment, and left. The survivors who remained understood the truth. There was no rebuilding from this. Their civilization was over. Other empires watched in horror. They had dismissed humanity as insignificant, a minor species barely worthy of mention. Now, they whispered the name of Adrian Voss, the man who had erased an empire over a single life. The Zyrrakians had believed themselves untouchable. They had laughed as they broadcasted Ilara's execution. No one was laughing now. On the edge of known space, Adrian stood aboard his flagship, staring out into the void. The war was over, but there was no celebration. No speeches. No victory parades. His officers waited for orders, uncertain of what came next. Conquering the Dominion's territory would be easy. Humanity could expand, claim entire systems without resistance. Adrian had no interest in conquest. He had made his point. The Zyrrakians were not just defeated, they were a warning. The next empire that thought to challenge humanity, to take from them, would remember what happened here. A final message was sent across the stars, a transmission that reached every major power in the galaxy. Adrian's voice was calm, but his words carried the weight of 1,000 battles. Humanity does not seek war. But we do not forget. And we do not forgive. Nothing more needed to be said. The human fleet turned and vanished into hyperspace, leaving only devastation in its wake. The Zyrrakians, once conquerors, were now ghosts. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. In the quiet that followed, rulers and warlords re-evaluated their strategies. Some strengthened their borders, fearing retaliation for past offenses. Others sought alliances, desperate to stay on humanity's good side. None dared to test them. In a universe where power dictated survival, humanity had been underestimated for the last time. They had shown the galaxy the one truth that could never be ignored. They were not the strongest. They were not the oldest. But they were the last species in the universe you ever wanted to make an enemy.